The path to enlightenment lies within us. The path to enlightenment is the one that takes us to our own real highest self. How many selves do we have that we have to go through this path to find out who our real self is? The mystics explain that there are broadly 5 categories of experiences which make us feel who we are, and each one of them is like a cover upon the real self. First of all, and very importantly, this physical body covers our conscious self, and therefore we start believing and start accepting that the physical body is our self. So long as we keep on believing that the physical body is our self, and we do not put attention on the consciousness operating inside, we get deluded, and not knowing the reality of our own self, taking the physical body to be the self, we keep on creating more and more relationships outside in this world, and we keep on getting entangled in the illusion of this world and never get the answers to our question and remain in darkness. Therefore, the first level or category of covers upon us, which does not let us see our real self, is the physical body and the physical world through which it gets attached to all the things which we call life's experience. And we are trying to find the path while we are troubled by this setup of thinking that we are the physical body and the physical world is our reality, and we have to find a path in this setup. The mystics tell us that even if we could overcome this obstacle and consider that the physical body is merely a cover, it is like a cloak, and we could pursue a path that takes us inward towards the consciousness in the body, taking the body to be unreal, even then the next layer, which is called the sensory or astral layer of experience, is as unreal as this one. It looks more real in relation to this physical world, but in relation to the reality of the conscious self, it is as unreal as this physical world is. But when people, in search of the path to enlightenment, go within themselves and discover that they have a being and they have a consciousness and they can move about and experience things like they do here, indeed much better, in greater clarity of sense perceptions, they start believing that must be the real self, and therefore they get trapped into a new illusion and take that to be the reality, and therefore they lose enlightenment by taking another set of illusions to be reality. Because indeed, that second category of covers is the astral or sensory self, which consists of the sense perceptions operating without the need of physical organs or physical body. But they are not the real self. The conscious self operates within that astral or sensory self. When some lucky ones, pursuing the path of enlightenment, of going within, cross that hurdle, and they go beyond that, and they are able to pierce the sensory apparatus and find out that the senses are functioning merely to create a vehicle for input of experience through the senses inside consciousness, and that consciousness per se is not the same thing as the vehicle in which the senses are pouring in. If they pierce that level, they are caught by a third level. The third level, which we call the causal category or the mental category, in which the mind takes over the role of the self and says these thoughts and concepts and ideas and questions and answers must be the real self. Therefore, I have escaped from the illusion of the physical and the astral and sensory, and I found out the truth, which is the mental and causal realm of experience. But the truth is, even the mental and causal realm is merely a cover upon consciousness, which is using the mental and causal realm to gather thoughts, concepts, information, knowledge, memory, forecast, all these things that are being used by consciousness through the mental process are external to the consciousness itself. Therefore, they are not the true self. The truth hides behind that. If somebody extremely lucky, 1 in a million, is able to see this fallacy and see that what is the cover is being called the self, that it is as unreal in relation to reality as the physical body is in relation to reality. That this was merely a third cover inside. If somebody can pierce that and go within and find consciousness per se, then one can say, yes, I found out my soul. I found out my own inner spiritual being. I found out who I was. And this mind was merely a cover. This sensory apparatus, this astral body was merely a cover. This physical body was merely a cover. The path to enlightenment can take a person that far to discover the very nature of one's consciousness. And one can say, I am now at least close to finding out who I am. But again, who I am, this I is still there. This is my soul. That's me. That's I is still there. And that I is discovered to be as much a cover upon consciousness as the mind or the senses or the physical body. Therefore, it is an extremely rare event, an extremely unusual thing for a pursuer of truth and enlightenment to pierce all these categories of obstacles and covers, including the cover of the spiritual obstacle of I-ness, of individuation, to find out that there is something lying beyond this individuation which can take us to the real knowledge of the self. That even this feeling that I am a soul is an experience of illusion, an experience that is outside of the self. The self is the one that is experiencing individuation. Individuation is not the self. The I is not the self. The I is an experience of the self. That what is the self? There have been very, very rare cases of people piercing that obstacle, because the very questioner ceases. The very question and search stops when you have reached the ultimate truth about the I. And when the I itself is a cover, who is going to tell us that there is something beyond the I, that the individuation, that the fact that we are feeling like one unit of consciousness itself is a cover? Very few mystics, very few perfect masters have appeared in this world even to share these thoughts with us and to tell us that the path to enlightenment does not end by finding your soul but goes beyond. Now what is beyond? Supposing we were to drop the I and say there is no I, there is no individual soul, and pierce and go into pure consciousness, we would find that the pure consciousness consists of a totality of awareness from which the individuation came into being. And the totality of consciousness is hidden behind all these covers and lies as the source of all knowledge, source of all experience, and therefore that is the real enlightenment. What would happen if one found totality of consciousness inside? One could say that is the reality, and therefore I found total consciousness. But to find total consciousness separated from all these other experiences is itself an illusion. Because if one could say this is unreal and that is real, that is not total anymore. Therefore, finding absolute consciousness even beyond individuation is not the final step for enlightenment. If one wants to have real enlightenment, one finds that consciousness per se creates its totality. From totality creates the individuation and the individual soul. From the individual soul ties up with the mind to create the mental realm of time, of beginning, middle and end. And from there moves on to sensory perceptions to give depth to an external illusion, gets into a physical body and makes this physical world real. And it's the same consciousness all the way. When we discover it's the same consciousness creating all the way, we have to give it a different name to it, a different word for it. These people of enlightenment told us there has to be a word to describe this power which creates our own self and then develops into experiences of all the illusory selves. They could not find a word, so they left it by saying it is the Word. Hence, St. John said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That is the real path to enlightenment. So go within, right up to the Word, and find out what knowledge is.